Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Mentally Fit Athlete Podcast. My name is Lidia Garcia. I'm an associate clinical social worker, and I'm joined by Dr. Jason von Stietz, who specializes in sports psychology. And today we're talking about the LA Marathon. Jason, you were able to be part of the medical tent and working on the psychology side of things for these athletes. Tell us about it.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, it was a great experience. So this is also a really um, rare opportunity, at least so far. To my knowledge, um, the Boston Marathon was the first marathon to have. It might be the first marathon to have medical tents. I'm not sure, but it was the first marathon to have a medical psychology team um, of licensed therapists placed into the different medical tents. Uh, so, for people who don't know, marathons will have medical tents set up at different sort of mile markers of the race. And then it's usually physicians, nurse practitioners, registered nurses that are there to provide sports medicine for athletes who are cramping, who might be who knows, someone could even have a heart attack. I've heard that each marathon, maybe one person or one or two people have heart attacks or some kind of cardiac issue. So it is really important that those medical tents exist. And the Boston Marathon was the first marathon to have therapists in those tents helping people with panic attacks, helping people in emotional distress, or just being there to be a calming presence and kind of comfort and talk to the different runners who are struggling with whatever it is they're struggling with. And this was the first year that this is at the LA Marathon. So that was a great experience. And yeah, should I keep going or
Yeah, I mean, that's great. I mean, it is pretty cool that that this is the first year that it's been at the LA Marathon. How did that? Do you know how that came about?
Yeah, yeah. So there's a guy, Adam Boardman. He was a part of the Boston team at least one year. I'm not sure how long. And then he got some great experience, and then started advocating for the LA Marathon to incorporate that into their to the medical tents. And it was a long journey. He was making phone calls, writing emails, and advocating for about 18 months. And then finally, 17 days before the race, it was his proposal was finally approved. And
Wow.
then he reached out to some colleagues that he'd been in touch with. He reached out to me, and then I reached out to a lot of the members of the LA County Psych Association, Sport and Performance Psychology Special Interest Group. And so a lot of members of that group were part of the medical teams. About half of the med psych team was made up of the sports psych SIG people, which was great. Yeah, it was a really great experience.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just that's pretty wild that it that I guess it took so long to get approved in a way. Like that's
Yeah,
kind of like blowing my mind a little bit, like hearing that because you
yeah,
know, as an athlete, as a runner, knowing the amount of mental um I guess mental strength that it takes, right? Mental fitness that it takes to pursue a goal as great as a marathon. It's pretty significant, and there's high highs and there's very low lows because sometimes there like along the way in training there's tons of different adjustments that are made. One day you're feeling amazing and then the next week you're feeling like you've made the worst decision in your life and why am I running?
right.
And so they're uh in that way. I think that can apply to many sports, but running is one of those places where it's largely individual and a lot of the hard work is done on your own, even if you have training partners. And no matter what, like you're on that course. Yeah, there's a ton of people running around you, but you're on that course largely by yourself, largely doing your own thing. And so, um, therapy or psychology, sports psychology plays a really significant role um, in helping an athlete reach their goals.
Right.
And then managing those disappointments along the way if they are existing, or the panic of like, I went out too fast, I went out too slow, my body is cramping, I've never run this far before because maybe their training wasn't what it needed to be. Tons of things like that. What were some of the mental health concerns or the more psychological concerns that you were seeing along the course?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. It really varied. Um, and it did seem pretty tied into um, how the person was doing as an athlete, their training, that kind of thing. So most of the runners um, were actually there for some kind of physical need. And usually my role um, was to be kind of the unofficial point person and, uh, just spot somebody who's coming in because the rest of the medical team, they were all very busy. Maybe, two or three nurses or two different physicians would go to one person who just came to the tent and they would be working on that person. And then maybe
What
three
would they
more
be coming
people.
in for? Do you know what they would be coming in for? Like, would they be
Yeah,
saying, I don't know, my hamstring? Like, what would they be asking the nurses or sports medicine doctors
sure.
for?
Yeah, so it really varied. So the first people, the most elite runners, they just came running by and they had no issue. And I had heard from people with previous experience, if you see one of the elite runners, like the lead runners, fall or have an issue, don't touch them. They have their own medical team, and if you come over and help them, and then that person fails a drug test, pops for steroids or something,
Mhm.
then they can say, "Oh, that person put some
Yeah.
cream on me, and it must have had testosterone, and that's why I failed the test."
Why are you
So,
doping all these athletes, Jason? Getting everybody
chaos.
in trouble. They're failing the USADA, like, yeah,
Yeah,
screens.
yeah, exactly.
Whereabouts violations. I don't know.
Yeah, right. So those people, they were fine. They were doing great. And if something happened, they have a medical team. They'll handle it. And then the second group of runners who or you would still consider elite, they're still very good. Um, they would literally come like sprinting into the medical tent, and then they would just shout something like, "I need tape," or I need water. I need, if it was water, they'd probably just keep running. But I
Mhm.
can't. It was tape.
Yeah.
Maybe it was Vaseline.
If
If
it's chafing.
they're yeah, if they had chafing, um, maybe a bandage if they needed that for some reason. But they would sprint in. They would be there for about 1 minute, maybe 2 minutes, and then they would just sprint out. And it felt kind of like being a pit crew and at some kind of like NASCAR event. And
Uh-huh. Formula
usually,
One. I'll use
yeah,
Formula
Formula
One.
One. Okay, sure, sure. Let's get that right. And a lot of times they would be leaving, and I would see them at that point. Oh, dang, because it was so fast. Um, so that was the second wave of runners, and then after that, then many of the athletes or the runners would maybe also need tape, maybe also need a bandage, but many of them at that point were coming in for cramping or you know maybe also chafing, but cramping was the biggest issue. And then they would um, ask for biofreeze or something like that, some kind of spray. And luckily, the medical tents had plenty of the spray bottles. And
Any
uh,
magic spray.
yeah, I think at one point I saw a nurse practitioner with a spray bottle in each hand, and I asked her, like, in your daily work, how often do how often do you spray people? And she's like, never, never. But that day, the day of the marathon, that was like 90%
Hmm.
of what she did, just constantly spraying people. And at that point, my job was just noticing people come in, like, I got a cramp. Can you have any
Yeah.
spray? Like, oh, then I would just point them, oh, right over there. Or I'd call somebody over, oh, we need some spray. And that was a lot of it for a while.
Hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I remember that magic spray getting really popular with like the World Cup,
Yeah.
and it would be like World Cup soccer games, and someone would have like an injury or like barely crash into someone else. They'd be like on the floor, just like on their deathbed, rolling around, and
Yeah.
then someone would come and spray them, and they pop up, and they're like all happy again, like
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong. So I thought about the spray, and I thought about like, well, what's actually happening, like for us physically and psychologically, like when we get this spray, like what is going on? And that magic spray is mostly made up of like cooling agents or sometimes like a numbing formula. So you don't need to take off any layers as far as like your clothing. They could spray it right over. Um, and I don't, and which has always been confusing to me because if you want something to penetrate the skin, but it's going over your sock, like why is it working?
Right.
Um, and so like for that part, I'm wondering if it's more of like a placebo effect, right? Like I
Sure.
got the spray, I'm good. I can keep going now. But like as far as like from the neuroscience or like psychology side of it, like when a cooling agent is on your skin or a numbing agent on a body part that's feeling a little bit cramped, it 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 numbs it so that the pain receptors aren't firing in the same way in your brain, and so you're able to get through that next few blocks probably because I don't know how long like it actually lasts.
Sure.
um but yeah, it's pretty interesting how that works, but like back to sort of placebo effect, sometimes just having that thing, just having like the spray, just having like the band-aid, just having the tape that you think might be in the right spot, like
Yeah.
it changes the way that we perceive our ability, our belief in our ability to finish maybe that marathon or other task or event.
Right. Yeah, and there were several medical tents. There might have been 14 or so. Um, and I do wonder if certain runners were maybe stopping by each tent and just get sprayed and then get a
Mhm.
little bit of a mental boost and then keep running. So and then sometimes we would spray it over people's like shirts or pants or socks. Um, One person did ask to spray it on their foot, but didn't want to take their shoe off. And at that point, one of the nurses or maybe a physician did say, "Oh, it's not going to work through your shoe. You have to sit down and take your shoe off." Uh, so there does seem to be a limit to what it can
Penetrate.
absorb through. Yeah, penetrate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do wonder about that. And then some athletes were definitely in a lot of pain and needed spray and maybe needed some cramps massaged out.
Yeah.
Maybe they sat down or laid in a bed and then they had to get massaged, sprayed and massaged, and there was some kind of gel that they would put on them. Um, and then, or they would just sit in a chair or just need to like be propped up by somebody else for a little bit. There were people who were in really, pretty severe cramping.
Yeah. I guess something I didn't ask you and that we didn't talk about is what mile were you at? What mile marker? So a marathon, for anyone who's listening who doesn't know, a marathon is 26.2 miles. So it's a pretty long way.
Yeah.
Where were you along the course?
Yeah, I was near the end. I was at mile 18, and then the route would loop around, and then our tent was across the street from mile 25.
Okay.
So we would see people kind of coming and going, and usually
Yeah,
people,
that's an important spot
yeah,
because that 18 to 20, that's where people hit that so-called wall, right? And we're and that portion of the course, like I run that portion of the course before. I haven't done the LA marathon, but I've done runs on that portion of the course, and it is the worst part of the course. And if you
Yeah.
ask anyone who like on it, it is the worst part of the course.
Yeah.
It seriously feels like it's uphill both ways in
Yeah.
the snow. But no, not in the snow because it's LA. So it's like in the blazing heat with like the full
Yeah.
sun on you. Like
Yeah.
it's it's uphill from 18 to like 22, 23-ish. Um and then it kind of loops around and I mean it does go downhill a little bit, but entirely exposed where there's no trees. There's it's a pretty brutal concrete like
Yeah.
it's a pretty crazy it's a really difficult portion of the run, and it's right there in that spot where people are really starting to hurt.
Right.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And we would see that, and you can kind of tell people were just running, running, pushing themselves, and then they see our tent, and then finally, like, oh, I better go in. And they would. There were people who were staggering in. Um, I think someone almost fell. There was a person or two who got an injury at mile 25 across the street and couldn't make it, and then someone had to go and help them walk over. And there was a couple times someone was driven in by a medical cart to
oh
our medical
wow.
tent. um, so it's a challenge. It's a challenge. um, and sometimes it was because people were working very hard and maybe trying to qualify for the Boston Marathon, or maybe they're trying to get a personal best. And then and I kept hearing the same thing from several people, which was just I wasn't feeling good for a while, and I kept pushing it. I thought I could make it, and so
Yeah.
that's
And,
is an important
yes,
part.
a thought that I'm having too is like, that magic spray, the numbing effects of like the band-aids that we put on. And, even though the physical therapist is telling you like, hey, maybe you need to adjust your training, or like maybe not a marathon next month. Like, the kind of the stubbornness of some people are like, no, I'm gonna do it anyway. Like this is my one shot. And maybe they haven't built up the base that they need, the actual foundation to build this structure to meet that goal that they have, whether it's Boston Marathon qualifying time or the PR or whatever else. So like that numbing spray has come in handy for several months, maybe, and but they're just masking what's actually going on. And so I think that that's difficult for people too, and like why our work is also significant for these areas when people are experiencing a setback during training, and you need like a dose of reality, but also like a space where you can accept that and maybe even grieve that this might not be your year. Because because sometimes we're describing this medical tent and it sounds like a war zone, and it's
Sure.
like,
Yeah.
oh, people were coming in with like this injury and that injury, and it was
Yeah.
moving so fast, and like, and it sounds hectic, right? It sounds like,
Yeah.
why would anybody want to do this thing? And it's not like that for everyone, because as you were describing, like, the elites, or maybe those sub elite runners who they're popping in, and I just need a little bit of Vaseline because my armpits chafing, or my nipples for the men, things like that, and
Right.
they kind of know what that thing is that they need, but they're not writhing on the ground, right? Because in theory, they've done the work to successfully complete that race.
Yeah.
And of course, not everyone is an elite or sub elite runner. It can be the average person also whose understanding of what their ability is, what their pace can be, and how to get themselves safely from mile 1 to mile 26.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah. So really pacing yourself and knowing yourself and knowing when to slow down did seem to be very important when it comes to running a marathon. Um, there were athletes, like I mentioned, who had some kind of race-ending injury, and then that's when having a therapist, or just even uh, physician or a nurse who just is has really good bedside manner would come in really handy. Because man, there were some people, and I don't want to get into too many details just to not put them on
Preserving
blast. Yeah,
confidentiality.
yeah.
Yeah.
But there are people who were working really hard trying to qualify for Boston or trying to achieve a personal best or whatever goal they have, and they had some kind of race-ending injury, and sometimes they were carted in, and they might have been writhing in pain and dehydrated, and there could be all kinds of stuff going on. And so there's that physical part, and then there's also grieving because they had these dreams, they had these big hopes for how the marathon was going to go, and maybe plans afterward, and then all of that has to change because they have this significant physical injury. And then I got to be there to um, lead them through box breathing if they're writhing in pain, because they can concentrate on that instead of on all the cramps and different physical sensations they're experiencing. Or maybe the worst of the pain is over but they still can't continue, and then I can be there to just chat, talk to them, and it is different than therapy, so I'm
Hmm.
not necessarily going really deep with them, but just asking them how they're feeling, letting them know about resources, asking them about other activities they enjoy, and just kind of small talking and getting their mind off of things. And there were a few times where maybe the EMTs or the firefighters were wheeling somebody off, and then somebody waved at the whole medical team. Bye, thanks, thank you, nice meeting you. Bye.
That's sweet. Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
for someone who has experienced like an athletic disappointment like that,
Hmm.
um, you know, again, like our work comes in very significantly for like that next training round, or like for helping somebody um to be able to want to try again, right? Like, that disappointment could feel so great that
Yeah.
they might feel like, well, why am I even doing this, or why should I even try again, like I am, and then negative self-belief can creep
Right.
in, or whatever else, right? um and there could be like shame, embarrassment, lots of other things if they've experienced that type of athletic disappointment, and fear about what will that next workout look like,
Right. Right.
so, and we talked in a previous episode about fear related to like workouts, um, and how that can really stall a person's their overall well-being, and their
Sure.
and mental, emotional, physical, all of it. um so yeah, that would be a place I would imagine that if a person had experienced some kind of athletic disappointment in that way, it's important to come in and unpack that a little bit, and create a new plan to approach the goal differently the next time.
Right, absolutely. It can be very easy to get into all or nothing thinking and think when you're in the middle of a marathon, think, I got to go hard. I got this pain, but I got to keep going. It's like, well, you're going to pay a price. Um,
Yes.
and and then
Well,
it can be
I'm laughing because I'm running a 5K next weekend, and I literally just told my coach, like, I'm not in PR shape, but I'm just gonna go like sicko mode. I'm just gonna go all out, and like, who cares? If I die at the end, I die. And it's a little bit lower stakes because it's only
yeah.
3 miles, but but sometimes we have these like visions of grandeur in our minds, and like, no, I'm gonna be the hero of this
Yeah.
story. And
Yeah.
like, it doesn't
Yeah.
always work out like that.
Yeah. Well, maybe I can stand at mile 1.5 and have a spray bottle
Yeah,
and just
I'm gonna need that. I need that.
it'll just be
Thank
Sprite.
you.
a
Yeah,
little, little bit of Sprite.
just a little spray. Thanks, Jason.
I can feel it working.
That testosterone even better. I'm just kidding. No.
Yeah. Why not? Yeah. Yeah. And then it can be easy to get into all or nothing thinking again after that disappointment and
Yeah.
think, well, I'll just give it up. I'll, forget this whole thing. And usually, the most helpful thought is somewhere in the middle. Maybe don't run so hard that you hurt yourself and end up in a medical tent. And, maybe keep training, but, take care of your health first. And your health is more important than any single event or any single race.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely agree with that. Where like our long-term, our ability to enjoy whatever sport it is long term is more important than that one instance, right? Because we want to be able
Right.
to do this for a long time and we want to be able to be healthy individuals for a long life, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then there were some other situations that came up that I don't know for sure, but could have been OCD related. Because I do work with athletes with OCD. And when somebody has OCD, oftentimes they can doubt things even though there's tons of evidence in front of them, and they can ask for reassurance. And someone else can, it can just seem so obvious.
Hmm.
Um, so without getting into some of the actual things that people said, people, and some of the athletes were actually pretty good, like, not quite elite, but, maybe sub elite, but come over, stop by the medical tent, and then ask something like, should I keep going? What? And it would be really confusing
Yeah,
because
okay, yeah.
I wasn't in my therapy frame of mind, and
Uh-huh.
when they would ask something like that, like, "Oh, should I keep going?" or "Does this go to the beach?" or "Where do I turn?" Something like that. I would get confused for a second, and then just keep going, keep. Oh, okay, and then they would just keep going. They just it could have been OCD, and they could have been doubting the obvious and having some kind of obsession, like, oh, what if I'm messing up right now? What if I was supposed to turn, and everybody else is doing it wrong and I'm doing it wrong with them? and
Hmm.
and they can have a lot of anxiety and then compulsively ask really obvious questions.
Hmm.
And I haven't talked to the other people from the medical tents, but maybe they were doing this at every medical tent. And
Mm.
good for them for running the marathon. But
Yeah.
that could have been an example of OCD.
Interesting. That's really interesting. Because they just wanted the and I wonder if like even the excuse to stop, you know what I
Sure,
mean? Like the excuse to like, oh, there's a medical tent there. Like if I'm at the medical tent, then it's not so weird if I stop to ask an obvious question or if I just need a break, right? Or like
sure.
or if I just need I don't know. If that anxiety is starting to kind of creep up and like I just need a place to sort of like stop and recollect so that I can.
Yeah, and that did definitely happen. People would just stop by and then maybe say their feet hurt, or just describe some kind of like vague pain. And it's mile 18, so there's plenty of reasons to have different
Yeah.
different pains. And then they would just sit in a chair, get them some water, talk to them for a little bit. Um, Maybe they would describe how they're feeling to one of the medical staff there, and then they would, sometimes people would just stop for a minute. Sometimes it'd be 20 minutes, and then they'd be on their way. And then I would, recommend that over pushing so hard that you end up getting injured and need to stop.
Yeah. Yeah. Marathons are long.
They are long. They are long.
There's a lot of things that can happen along that
Yeah,
course.
yeah. And then by the end, or nearing the end of the day, um, we started getting person after person who had blisters.
Mm,
Sometimes they didn't have the appropriate shoes. Sometimes I'm guessing maybe they didn't really train that much, and they were just thinking, I'm gonna do a marathon.
yeah,
Many of the people
those
were,
nice little baby feet, no calluses.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
You don't
And
want to look
some
at
of
my feet. Just kidding.
yeah,
Just kidding.
and I was I was surprised how many kids were running the marathon.
Yeah.
Lots of high
Yeah,
school
they've got that
students.
great program the Students Run LA.
Right. Yeah, and you could see them from their shirts. Students run LA, um, and there was masses of them. Some of them were running and were doing pretty well. Many of them were walking. And towards the end of the day, lots of kids from Students Run LA who were just kind of wearing their regular shoes were
Mhm.
stopping by and had blisters and needed gel and bandages put on their feet and get some magic spray and some water.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so it's great that they were doing this. Uh, and if those were the only shoes that they had, then then they had to do that. But yeah, that like you did see that as a big trend at the end. Lots of
Yeah.
people walking and kind of limping along and just needing help with the blisters.
Yeah, people who might not have had as much access to super shoes and all of the other things that you would have seen in those beginning packs, right? Just the access to even, I mean, now we're getting into my social work side where I'm talking about access to safe places to run or access to even having the type of maybe employment or school condition where like you have a nice track at your school or you
Right.
have a safe neighborhood to run in or you have a flexible enough work schedule to be able to train that many hours for a marathon. And so you can see where maybe the access and the resources start to possibly suffer in that group that you're describing in the back of the pack.
Yeah, absolutely.
Irregardless, like completing a marathon is an incredible achievement for anyone of any age. And I know there were probably saw a few of the legacy runners too who
I
were
did.
probably in
Yeah.
their 80s,
Yeah.
and like they've been doing it since the beginning. They've probably done it all 40 years, right?
Uh-huh.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Um, and it is an incredible accomplishment and does kind of feed that kind of knowing of the self of like I am capable of this thing. I did just do that. Like and there's a pride in there that I hope translates over to other areas of that person's life.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was even for people who walked. I mean, it's man, it's one hell of a walk. So
Yeah.
like, good for them. And I did see legacy runners. I saw one or two that were somewhat close to the front of the pack, and that was very impressive. Um, and then I saw a few who were near the end of the pack with lots of the people walking, and a couple of them just stopped by, had some water, chatted it up a little bit, got some spray, and then went on their way. So that was really cool to talk to them and just get to see that these people are out there. And then I did hear from people who had done this previously, that the last people to finish the marathon end up finishing at like 10 p.m. and the city opens up the streets again, and the runners move over to the sidewalk, and then they just keep going.
Yeah.
And if they finish at 10, great, good for them. They finished it.
Yeah, they move them over to the sidewalk and the trash trucks come out. I don't know if the actual like finishing tent and the big banners and all that are still up and if the timing clock's still running. I would hope so, honestly. Like if
Yeah,
you've been working at this all day long, I'd really hope that that the McCourt Foundation and the city of LA keep those things up for them,
yeah,
um
yeah.
because
Hopefully.
yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, I left at 4, and
Yeah, so you didn't see that.
when I left at 4, there were still huge herds of people walking. Um, so I can easily see people, still being. I can easily see still lots of people finishing at like 5 or 6 or so, maybe 7, and then like 10
Yeah.
p.m.
And maybe that's something I should look up. Like I haven't looked it up to see like who were the last finishers for the LA Marathon,
Yeah,
or if there's like a time limit thing on it. But I know, like, I mean, I lived in New York City for a really long time, and my favorite weekend of the year was New York City Marathon weekend, because in all five boroughs, everyone is out. The entire course is lined with people, and it's a
nice.
huge celebration.
Yeah.
Everything stays up for those last people, those last finishers, and it's a really big celebration at the finish
Oh,
line
nice.
when those final few cross. And it's a really special moment to see someone who has worked so hard to do that thing. So
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
really, really precious moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think it was going to be such a party. Because I got there, I think I got there at about 6 a.m., maybe 6:15, and there was already some people, aside from staff and volunteers, some people there finding their spot with their like lawn chairs and their supplies and stuff.
Yeah.
And then really early on, there was tons of people. There was DJs. There was people with signs. People. It definitely felt like it was a tailgating experience.
Yeah,
Um,
you were right in the spot where like all of the different running clubs of all of LA set themselves up. And did you get to see Diplo DJ?
Maybe that's who I was hearing. I didn't see the DJ. I didn't see the DJ, but I could hear, and I couldn't hear what they were saying. But
Mhm.
every once in a while, they would blah, 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 and then there would be a group of people
Yeah.
and then blah, 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 and then another group of people So okay, I guess I
There's
heard.
a ton of DJs along that area, but Diplo ran it, and
Okay,
this is like I think the second time he's an LA marathon, but he ran
nice.
it, and he would have passed right past you, and right in that
Uh,
area, he had his Diplo Run Club DJ booth set up, and he
okay.
stopped in the middle of his race, did a DJ set, and then finished the race.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Well, it's a fun
Yeah,
time out there. You never know
yeah.
what celebrity DJ is going to show up and
Yeah.
give you a little performance.
Yeah, I felt like I could have used a churro. I didn't have a
Yeah,
I didn't have a churro or
more tour
anything.
vendors next year.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I think this is a good place to to kind of
sure.
tie it all back together, and
Sure.
that's a pretty amazing experience. I think mental health and marathon isn't something that people think of right away, or during a race it might not be the thing that people think about right away, but it's absolutely an essential part for preparing yourself for a big event, for a big athletic event.
Right.
Maybe having tools and strategies for during your race, and then having the support there in the medical tent when you need it is pretty incredible, pretty awesome. So I'm
Yeah.
glad you were able to be there to support so many of those athletes out there at LA Marathon.
Yeah, yeah, it was a great experience. I definitely want to do it again. Um, yeah, and then hopefully there'll be more opportunities like this. If it started at Boston and now it hit LA, yeah, hopefully we'll just start seeing this type of thing at more and more mass events, whether it's a marathon or a triathlon or whatever else is out there. There's plenty of opportunities out there.
Yeah. So Jason, where can the audience find you?
Well, you can go to my website, drjasonvonsteets.com. And I'm also on Instagram and Blue Sky, whatever it's called. And then my handle is at CBT Sports Psych. Where can they find you?
You can find me online at lidiagarcia.net, and you can find me on socials at liddy.g.
Sounds good. All right. Talk to you soon.
Bye.